Relics of Terror. It was a rainy night in Boston, and I found myself alone in the morgue, surrounded by shadows and the distant echo of raindrops, tapping against the dusty windows. The smell of formaldehyde and blood mingled with the heavy air, and I, Dr. Fernando Albuquerque, forensic doctor, was immersed in yet another case that promised to be intriguing. For over 2 decades, I had committed myself to giving voice to the dead. But that night, the feeling of being watched made me doubt everything I believed. The newly arrived body, that of a man in his 30s, lay stretched out on the autopsy table. His face, frozen in a silent scream, reflected a death as inexplicable as it was terrifying. The fluorescent light above me buzzed as if it had a life of its own, and the darkness around me seemed to intensify with each passing second. I had seen many things in my career, but something about that scene left me unsettled. There was not just a mystery to solve, there was a presence, a weight in the air that defied logic. As I examined the body, strange noises began to resonate through the corridors. At first it was a whisper, almost inaudible, as if something wanted to tell me a secret. Then the sound transformed into a series of knocks that reverberated through the old building. My heart raced. I was a skeptic. I'd always believed that everything had a scientific explanation, but at that moment, doubt began to infiltrate my mind. "Fernando, are you hearing this?" The voice of Eduardo, known as Duda, came through the radio. He was a detective and a good friend, always ready to face whatever was necessary, but that night I didn't want him there. What was happening was something I couldn't explain, and I feared he would become part of it. "I'm busy, Duda. What do you want?" I replied, trying to hide the tremor in my voice. "I received a call from you about a strange case. I'm on my way to the morgue," he said, his voice carrying a tone of concern. "Don't come. It's better if you stay away," I said, but the line was cut. It was too late. He was determined to help me, and I couldn't stop him. Meanwhile, the atmosphere in the morgue grew increasingly oppressive. The lights began to flicker, casting dancing shadows on the yellowed walls. It was then that I realized I was not alone. A presence was manifesting, something I couldn't see, but that I felt intensely. It was as if the morgue itself were alive, pulsing with a dark energy. The door to the autopsy room creaked open slowly, and I froze. The Whisperer, as I would later call it, was there. Its figure was indistinct, shrouded in shadows, but the sensation emanating from it was palpable. It was not a mere entity. It was fear personified, an echo of my deepest weaknesses. I tried to resist, but the soft, seductive voice began to murmur secrets I did not want to hear. "You never got over your friend's death, did you, Fernando? He is here waiting for you." The whisper slithered through my mind like a snake gliding through tall grass. The memory of that fateful day from my childhood came rushing back. I saw myself as a child, powerless in the face of a friend's death, losing him to an accident that made no sense. All my skepticism, all the logic I had built over the years, crumbled in the face of that reality. The Whisperer was there to remind me that behind all science there were emotions I could not control. I needed to get out. With Herculean effort I stood up, but the body on the autopsy table began to move. The surgical instruments, as if they had a life of their own, started to dance around me, and terror consumed me. I fled the room, running through the narrow, dark corridors, trying to escape the presence that seemed to be pursuing me. The morgue, which had once been my refuge, was now becoming a prison. The walls felt like they were closing in around me, and I knew I needed to find Duda and Ana Claudia, the investigative journalist who frequently collaborated with me. They were my allies, and I needed them more than ever. As I ran, I recalled the call Duda had received. The fear was palpable, but there was something else that pushed me to continue. I couldn't let the Whisperer win. It was forcing me to face my greatest fears, and I could not give in. Upon reaching the police observation room, I found Duda. He was looking around, concerned. "Fernando, what's happening?" He had no idea what I had faced. I don't know. "Something is wrong," I replied, feeling the weight of terror still pressing on my shoulders. Ana Claudia arrived shortly after, her eyes wide with concern. "I saw something on the security cameras. A shadow, something that shouldn't be there," she said, and her words cut through the tension in the air. "We need to go back to the morgue. We can't leave it like this," Duda said, his determination giving me courage. We returned, and when we entered, the atmosphere was even more oppressive. The Whisperer was lurking, waiting for me. I was confronted with the hardest choice of my life, to face what was hidden in the shadows or leave my friends behind. "Fernando, you need to tell us what's going on," Ana Claudia insisted, and I realized I could no longer carry this burden alone. There in the morgue, I finally shared my story, the trauma I had never overcome. Together we confronted the Whisperer, and in a moment of clarity, I realized that the true terror was not death, but my inability to deal with the pain of the past. As the night wore on, we fought against the presence, and in doing so, I found the strength to confront my trauma. The Whisperer was not just an entity. It was the manifestation of my insecurities, and by facing it, I finally managed to break free from the chains that bound me to my past. On that fateful night, I learned that death can be terrifying, but the true horror lies in the denial of our own emotions. And as I fled the morgue, I not only left behind a night of dread, but also embraced the possibility of healing the wounds that haunted me. The dawn in Boston brought a new light, and as I looked up at the clear sky, I knew that the past could be confronted and that the future still held its own stories, waiting to be revealed. The presence in the morgue seemed to have a life of its own, and the Whisperer was unwilling to let go. I knew I couldn't handle this alone, and the help of Duda and Ana Claudia was more than necessary. It was essential. As we exchanged nervous glances, a deep silence filled the room, as if time had stopped, and the very structure of the building was listening to our conversations. "You said you saw something on the security cameras?" I asked Ana Claudia, trying to keep my voice steady. Her expression was serious, and I realized she was just as scared as I was. "Yes, something was moving behind the doors. It wasn't just a shadow, Fernando. It was as if a figure was dragging itself, but it didn't look like a human body," she replied, and her words reverberated within me, like a distant echo of a nightmare I didn't want to remember. "Are you sure? Can we be certain it wasn't just a camera malfunction?" Duda asked, trying to find a rational explanation, but I knew there was no room for logic at that moment. "It wasn't a malfunction. I went over the footage several times," Ana Claudia insisted. "Man, the feeling I had, it's as if something was watching us, something beyond our understanding." I looked at both of them, and the gravity of the situation began to settle in me. The Whisperer wasn't just a creation of my mind, it was manifesting, and that made everything even more terrifying. We needed to act. "Let's investigate the area where the cameras captured the image. Maybe we can find a clue," I suggested, feeling the adrenaline coursing through my veins. The fear was palpable, but the determination to solve the mystery began to eclipse the terror. As we walked through the dark corridors, the walls seemed to whisper ancient secrets. Every step we took reverberated in the shadows, and the feeling of being watched intensified. It was as if the morgue itself was becoming a labyrinth, each turn revealing a new aspect of the terror surrounding us. "Fernando, do you really think this is related to the body you examined?" Duda asked, her voice tense. I hesitated, but the connection was clear. The man on the autopsy table, his expression frozen in a silent scream, had something to say. Something that would bring us closer to the truth. Yes, we need to find out more about him. Who he was, what happened to him. This could be the key to understanding what's happening here, I replied, and the determination in my voice seemed to calm Duda and Ana Claudia's unease. We returned to the autopsy room, and the body seemed to call to me. The fluorescent light buzzed and the atmosphere was thick with tension. I looked at the man's face, and suddenly an idea struck me. The marks on the body. They could tell us more about him, I murmured, moving closer to the table. Ana Claudia leaned in, her eyes scanning the surface of the pale skin. "You're right. These scars don't look like they're from a common accident. They seem like marks of something more." "Exactly," I said, starting to examine more closely. "He might have been a victim of something much deeper than a mere accident. What if he's part of an urban legend?" The mood in the room shifted again. The idea that this man could be more than just a mere corpse unsettled me. But there was an urgency, a need to uncover the truth behind his death. As we examined the body, something moved in the periphery of my vision. I quickly glanced at the corner of the room, where the shadows seemed to stir. The Whisperer was there, stronger than before. It manifested in a clearer form, and a shiver ran down my spine. "Duda, stay alert," I whispered, but it was too late. The whisperer approached, an oppressive presence, and I felt a crushing weight on my chest. "The past cannot be ignored," it murmured, and the words sounded like a warning. "Get out of our minds," Ana Claudia shouted, and the force of her determination seemed to clash against the entity. Duda, with a determined look, positioned himself beside me. "We are not afraid of you," he challenged, but within me, doubt began to resurface. "The stories you tell, the legends you ignore, they are all interconnected," the whisperer continued, "and the shadows danced around us as if they were alive. You must confront what you fear." I knew I had to confront it. The man on the table, the marks on his body, all pointed to something greater. "We need to understand what happened to him, what he knew," I declared, my voice trembling but resolute. Duda and Ana Claudia nodded, and together we decided to investigate further. With every moment, the atmosphere grew heavier, and the whisperer seemed to intensify its presence. It was as if the morgue was transforming into a maze of mysteries that challenged our understanding. As we searched for clues, the whisperer continued to torment us, revealing fragments of information about the man who had become our key to the mystery. But as we progressed, I realized we were not just explorers of a mystery. We were also prey to the very terror we were trying to unravel. Each step toward the truth seemed to pull us deeper into an abyss of despair. I felt that we were involved in something much larger than we had imagined. And with each new discovery, the line between reality and the supernatural grew thinner. What had happened to that man? What had he discovered? And more importantly, what was the whisperer trying to teach us? With these questions echoing in my mind, I realized we were about to face the greatest battle of our lives. The connection to the past, the weight of unresolved emotions, all intertwined in a single thread that would lead us to the truth. And I was determined to follow it, even if it meant confronting my worst fears. I knew the answer was lurking, waiting to be discovered, and that each step toward the truth could be the last. The whisperer became increasingly present, and with every word he uttered, I felt the weight of the situation become unbearable. The echo of his last words still resonated in my mind. "You must face what you fear." I'd always thought that the greatest fear I would face would be death, but now I realized that the true terror lay in the truth, hidden in the shadows of the morgue. As we examined the body, I noticed that the marks on his skin formed a pattern, something I had not noticed before. They were scars shaped like symbols, almost as if drawn with a purpose. What did this mean? A warning? A call? A connection to the whisperer? The pressure was mounting, and I needed answers. "We need to document this," I said, grabbing my phone to take pictures. But as I did so, a wave of cold swept through the room, and the fluorescent light began to flicker. The feeling of being watched intensified, and I couldn't shake the sense that something terrible was about to happen. "Fernando, are you okay?" Duda asked, her voice cutting through the tension of the moment. But I couldn't respond. The whisperer seemed to be feeding off my fear, intensifying the already oppressive presence. It was as if the room was closing in around us, and I felt my breathing become difficult. "I'm just need a moment," I managed to murmur, but panic was beginning to settle in my chest. The shadows seemed to dance around us, and I had the feeling we were being led to a place we couldn't comprehend. "Let's get out of here," Ana Claudia suggested, her voice trembling. "We need fresh air." But as soon as we started to move, the whisperer manifested with greater force. The walls seemed to close in, and a wave of despair hit me. It was as if the morgue was becoming a labyrinth, and every path we chose led us back to the same place. "We can't leave. We have to find out what happened," I shouted, determination mingling with panic. What was happening? Why did the whisperer want us to stay here? We needed to understand the connection between him, the body, and the scars. Terror began to morph into obsession. As we continued to seek answers, the clues we found were contradictory. One moment, I felt we were close to uncovering the truth, and the next, everything seemed to fade into a tangle of uncertainties and fears. The marks on the man's body reflected stories of pain, but they were also a warning. What had he faced in life, and how did that connect to the whisperer? Then, right before us, something inexplicable happened. The lights went out completely, plunging us into deep darkness. The only source of light was the glow from my phone, which hesitated to illuminate what lay before us. The whisperer made himself heard again, his voice now echoing like a cutting wind. "You cannot escape what is within you. The past always returns, he said, and the feeling of being trapped in an endless cycle intensified. I could feel his presence behind me, but when I turned around, there was nothing there, only emptiness and darkness. "Fernando, look!" Duda shouted, and I followed her gaze. On the wall, the shadows began to twist, forming the image of the man on the autopsy table. His face was distorted in an expression of pain and despair, and I could feel sadness seeping into my heart. "He's trying to show us something," Ana Claudia said, her voice trembling. And as we watched the projection, I realized the expression on the man's face was a plea. The Whisperer was not just an entity tormenting us. He was a guardian of the past, an echo of the tragedies that had unfolded there. "We need to understand what happened to him," I said, determined not to let fear take over us. "He's calling us." But as I spoke, I felt the pressure increasing, as if the room itself was trying to expel us. As we looked closer, the scars on the body seemed to glow under the faint light of my phone, forming a narrative I still didn't comprehend. The Whisperer was right. The past was intertwined with us, and the truth we were seeking was a reflection of our own experiences and fears. "These symbols, they might be a form of communication," I said, trying to maintain clarity amid the chaos. "If we can decipher them, maybe we can understand what he wanted to tell us." But as I spoke, a new wave of fear washed over me. What if the truth was worse than the uncertainty? The walls began to vibrate, and I realized we were about to uncover something that could change everything. But the feeling that the Whisperer was manipulating us, guiding us to a dark destiny, was undeniable. What would be revealed next? I knew the answer was there, about to be unveiled, but at what cost? What we were about to face could be the key to the truth or the doorway to an abyss from which we could never return. The pressure in the room intensified, and I could feel the walls pulsating around us as if they were alive. The image projected on the wall began to distort, and amidst the chaos, a sense of urgency overtook me. The Whisperer was manifesting in a way I hadn't anticipated. He was not just an echo of the past, but an agent of the present. And it seemed that the revelation we were about to uncover was more terrifying than I could imagine. "These symbols, they are not just communication. They are warnings," I said, trying to gather my thoughts. But the truth echoing in my mind was becoming increasingly nebulous. The image of the man on the wall now seemed to writhe in agony. Each of his movements was a desperate attempt to warn us about something that was about to happen. Then something I never expected occurred. One of the fluorescent lights began to flicker frantically, and suddenly everything went dark again. The silence was deafening, and I could feel my heart racing in the darkness. But this time the silence was broken by a whisper. It was not the voice of the Whisperer I knew. It was the voice of the man, clear as crystal. "Do not look at him," he shouted, and a wave of panic washed over me. The intensity of the message hit me like a shockwave. What was he trying to tell us? The feeling that we were being watched intensified. "Fernando!" Ana Claudia shouted, and I heard her moving toward the exit. But before I could react, a deafening noise echoed through the room, as if something had been thrown against the wall. The phone I was holding flickered, casting a cold light on what lay before us. And then I saw it. The body of the man on the table was no longer still. He writhed, and the scars on his skin began to glow with a supernatural light. The symbols that had previously seemed to be mere marks of pain now pulsed, forming a clearer image. A creature, a dark figure, emerged from the shadows, shrouded in a cloak of darkness. The Whisperer was not just an entity, he was a guardian of a much greater evil. "He is seeking freedom," Duda exclaimed, her voice betraying fear. "But what does he really want?" I looked at the figure taking shape in the dim light of my cell phone. The creature seemed connected to the man, as if its essence was trapped in the scars adorning his body. "We need to go now," Ana Claudia shouted, pulling my arm, but something within me hesitated. The man was calling us, and the truth he wanted to reveal was just a few steps away. An uncontrollable urge to discover what had happened to him held me back. "No! We need to understand what happened here," I shouted, but my voice sounded weak amidst the growing despair. The environment was changing, the walls seemed to close in, and the creature projected itself forward, as if about to break free from its prison. "You cannot escape. You are part of this," the Whisperer shouted, and his words reverberated in the room. I realized with a shiver of horror that he was referring to me. What had I done? What had I not confronted in my own life that connected me to all this suffering? And then, as if everything was falling into place, I remembered something I had buried deep in my mind. A dark secret from my past, a tragedy I had tried to forget. The man on the table was not just a victim, he was a reflection of what I had always feared to face. The scars that adorned his body were a representation of my own unhealed wounds. "No, this cannot be true," I screamed, but my cry was drowned out by the figure now approaching. It writhed and transformed, and I knew the revelation was about to unfold. The room seemed to disintegrate, and the creature finally revealed itself in its true form, an amalgamation of pain, despair, and loss. "Look at what you fear to face," the whisperer exclaimed, and the image of the man now merged with the creature. It was an endless cycle of pain that I needed to break. But how? I was not prepared to confront the truth that was about to be exposed. I felt the room collapsing around me, and with it, a new wave of terror hit me. I was the key to the liberation of that tormented soul, but for that, I would have to confront my own scars. I can't, I screamed as the darkness closed in around me. The whisperer had become a catalyst for my own pain, and now I was about to discover how deep that connection was. The tension escalated, and the darkness seemed to feed on my fear. "You must face what you fear," the whisperer's voice echoed, and amidst the despair I realized that this was the only way to break the cycle. The truth I feared was about to be revealed, along with the consequences that would change everything. What I was about to discover could be the key to freedom, but it could also trap me in an endless abyss. The tension in the room was palpable, and I could barely breathe. The creature, now fully formed, emanated an aura of despair that seemed to penetrate every fiber of my being. What had I done to deserve this? The echo of the whisperer's words still resonated in my mind. "You must face what you fear." But how could I confront something so terrifying, so deeply rooted in my essence? The man's body on the table writhed in a movement that seemed to beg for help, yet it also seemed to challenge me. I knew he was trapped, just as I was trapped in my own past. The truth loomed over me, and I wasn't sure if I could bear its weight. The room was disintegrating, and I felt like a castaway in a sea of pain and confusion. "Fernando!" Ana Claudia shouted, her tone a mix of panic and urgency. She was almost at the exit, but something in me held her back. "We need to get out of here. Whatever this is, we can't face it alone." But I couldn't just leave them. A part of me wanted to run, to escape this distorted reality. Yet another part, the deeper one, knew that this was the opportunity to confront the shadows of my past. If I didn't do this now, I would never be able to move on, I thought. And this idea brought me a bit of clarity amid the chaos. The creature before me moved closer, its dark forms twisting grotesquely. I couldn't look away. There was something fascinating and terrifying in the way it moved, as if trying to convey a message. "You are the key," the whisperer whispered again. And I realized that on some level it was true. What I feared was the answer I valued more than anything. Focusing, I began to search within myself for what had brought me here. What had I not faced? Memories began to flood in, one after another, like a harrowing film I couldn't pause. The loss of a friend, the weight of guilt for not being able to save him, the pain of betrayal I had suffocated. I needed to confront this. The shadow of the creature was not just a specter of the man, but also a reflection of my own fears. "Look at him," I shouted, pointing to the man on the table. "He needs help. We need to help him find peace." Ana Claudia hesitated, and I saw the internal struggle in her eyes. The creature seemed to hesitate too, as if aware that my intention was genuine. "Do you really think you can help?" the whisperer intervened, his voice laden with skepticism. "You are nothing more than a prisoner of your own illusions. The pain you carry is your true prison." His words struck my heart like a blow. It was true. I had imprisoned myself in my own suffering, but now, looking at the creature and the man, I realized they were intertwined in a battle I could only understand by facing my own scars. "If I don't face this now, I'll never be able to escape," I murmured to myself. I needed a solution, and the only way to find it was by confronting the pain I had long buried. I can't let fear control me. The man on the table, now with his eyes fixed on me, seemed to understand. His eyes shone with a desperation that mirrored my own, but there was also a spark of hope. The connection between us was intensifying, and I knew the creature fed off our emotions, our weaknesses. "You are not alone," I said, trying to convey strength. "You must sacrifice something to free yourself and him," the whisperer warned, and the idea of sacrifice shook me. What would I be willing to lose? The room was twisting. The environment seemed to be fading into a cloud of uncertainties. The man on the table writhed once more, and I realized time was running out. I would sacrifice my pain, I declared, feeling each word pulled from a deep place within me. "I will let go of everything that binds me, everything that keeps me from moving forward." The whisperer laughed, but it was not a mocking laugh. It was a laugh of recognition of the struggle I was facing. The creature's scars began to pulse, and the light emanating from them seemed more intense. "Not enough," the whisperer exclaimed. "You need to face the truth. What do you really fear?" The room began to fade, and in a moment of clarity, I realized that fear was not just the pain I had suffered, but the fear of losing those I loved again, the fear of being insufficient, of not being able to protect. "I fear loss," I confessed, my voice trembling. "I fear not being strong enough." And it was at that moment that the creature stopped. It twisted. But now there was an understanding between us. "That is what connects you to me," it whispered, its voice intertwined with mine. "Face that loss. Free yourself from what binds you." I closed my eyes, allowing the memories to unfold. The laughter of my friend, the moments I couldn't save. And then I began to release. Tears streamed down my face as I let the pain leave me, transforming into a light that pulsed in the room. The connection with the man grew stronger, and as I let go, I felt he was also being freed. The creature dissolved into a cloud of light, and in one last act of sacrifice, I realized that true power came from accepting my pain, not denying it. And finally, the room began to illuminate as the shadows that once surrounded us dissipated, revealing a new horizon. The room now pulsed with a strange energy, as if the very air was charged with electricity. The creature, an amalgamation of shadows and despair, seemed to writhe as I faced the truth. Ana Claudia was paralyzed, the horrific transformation before us keeping her in a state of shock. I couldn't leave her there, but the weight of my own internal conflict was overwhelming. How could I help her when I was teetering on the edge of the abyss? "Fernando, do something." Her voice cut through the silence, but her desperation only heightened my own anxiety. The creature moved closer, and I could feel its presence like a biting cold in my spine. The whisperer, with its laughter echoing in my mind, became a specter that wouldn't let me rest. "Pain is your companion, and you cannot escape it. You are not strong enough to face it." The tension mounted with each passing second, and I realized the creature was feeding off my hesitation. The man on the table, still writhing in agony, silently pleaded for help. What was I waiting for? What more did I need to act? The whisperer had challenged me to confront loss, but the thought of facing my own weakness left me paralyzed. "I can't keep going like this," I murmured, turning to Ana Claudia. "If we don't do something, we'll all be lost." But looking at her, I saw that the hope that once shone in her eyes was now replaced by overwhelming fear. "We need to confront this together," I insisted, even knowing what that meant. "But I don't know if I can. Maybe it's too late." The creature let out an agonizing howl, as if it could sense my despair. The environment around us began to distort even further, as if the very room was being pressed between the forces of good and evil. The light that culminated in darkness seemed to fade away, little by little, and the whisperer was drawing nearer, whispering words that made me doubt myself. "You are losing the battle, Fernando. Pain is your destiny." Anger began to rise within me. How could I allow an entity like that to dictate my fate? It was time to break the chains that held me to the past. "No, I won't let you win," I shouted, my voice echoing in the room. The man on the table looked at me, and in his gaze was a glimmer of hope. "I can do this," I thought. "I have to do this." With a determined movement, I turned to the creature. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice steady despite the fear pulsing in my heart. The creature hesitated, its forms twisting, and then whispered, "You must accept your pain, Fernando. Only then can there be redemption." Ana Claudia, now closer to me, looked into my eyes. I could feel her vulnerability, but also her determination. "We're not alone," she said, and for the first time I saw that her courage could be the key. "You don't have to face this all by yourself." The connection between us intensified, and the creature seemed to hesitate. The whisperer, however, was not satisfied. You think unity can save you. That's just a trick of the mind. You're merely postponing the inevitable. Its words cut like knives, but I knew I couldn't let myself be swayed by that doubt. Listen, creature, I shouted, feeling the power of my voice. You feed on our pain, but you cannot control us. We are here to confront what you represent, and we are stronger together. The room responded with a tremor, as if the very space was reacting to my declaration. The shadows of the creature began to writhe, and I saw it starting to dissipate. It was as if my determination was illuminating the darkness around us, but the fight was far from over. The whisperer grew more aggressive, its words transforming into a deafening roar. You cannot escape the truth. You are weak and you always will be. The man on the table let out an agonizing scream, and I realized he was merging with the creature, as if his pain was intertwining with mine. "Fernando!" Ana Claudia cried out again, her voice now filled with desperation. "We need to act. What will you sacrifice?" I hesitated, the pressure mounting around me. What could I give? The pain? The guilt? But deep down I knew that what I feared most was losing those I loved. So with a shout of determination I declared, I sacrifice my fear. I let go of what binds me. In that moment, I felt a wave of energy coursing through my body, as if an electric current was passing through me. The room exploded with light, and the shadows began to fade. The creature, now in agony, was writhing, and the man on the table was breaking free from his chains. "This is just the beginning, Fernando," the whisperer screamed, but its voice was distorting, its presence diminishing. The light grew, and I knew I was on the right path. Fear could no longer control me. I had found the strength within me, and alongside Ana Claudia, I was finally ready to face whatever came next. The room was fully illuminated, and for a brief moment everything seemed at peace. But the shadows still haunted, and I knew the battle was far from over. It was only the beginning of my true struggle against the demons that inhabited not only this room, but also my soul. The environment around us had transformed into a battlefield, an arena where shadows danced frantically, and the light I had invoked struggled to prevail. The creature, now reduced to a more defined form, a twisted figure of pain and rage, rose before me. Its eyes, if they could be called that, were black holes emanating a deep despair. I was about to face what I feared most, not just the creature itself, but everything it represented. "Do you really believe you can defeat me?" the creature hissed, its voice a mix of echoes of pain and cruel laughter. The whisperer, still present in my mind, echoed its dark words. "You are nothing without your fear. Bane is your essence." "No, I am more than that," I shouted, feeling the energy pulse within me. The connection with Ana Claudia was an anchor, a light guiding me through the darkness. I needed her. "We are in this together, Ana Claudia. Whatever you are facing, we can overcome it." She stepped closer, and our eyes met. The fear was still there, but there was also a spark of determination. "Let's fight, Fernando. We cannot let this consume us." Her voice, now filled with courage, gave me the strength I needed. The creature lunged, and I knew I could not hesitate. With a cry filled with emotion, I channeled what remained of my fear, not to paralyze me, but to use it as a weapon. "I accept my pain. I accept the losses, the scars, everything I am." The words erupted like a roar, and in that moment, the light emanating from me intensified. The creature stopped, as if hit by a shockwave. Its distorted forms began to crumble, as if the light were burning its shadows. It screamed, a cacophony of agony and rage. "You cannot defeat me. I am your pain, your guilt. You cannot destroy me. No, you are nothing but an echo of what I once was." I felt stronger, more alive. The room trembled, and I realized that the battle was not just against the entity, but against everything it had taught me to fear. "You feed on my pain, but you can no longer control me." Ana Claudia was by my side, her presence a beacon amidst the chaos. Together we raised our hands, and a wave of light began to flow between us. The power of our union manifested in a penetrating glow. "Let's end this," I said, and together we launched the light at the creature. The explosion of energy was indescribable. The room lit up as if the sun were rising in a dark space, and the creature screamed, a high-pitched note that echoed everywhere. The shadows began to dissipate, and I felt we were close to victory, but like in a nightmare, the whisperer appeared in one last attack, a wave of despair that nearly knocked me down. "You cannot escape your past," it roared, and I felt the memories of my failures, pains, and regrets accumulating over me like a storm. You will always be weak. You will always be the shadow of what you could have been. The struggle within me intensified. It was true. I had fears, flaws, scars that seemed impossible to heal. But in that moment, I realized that true strength did not lie in not feeling pain, but in choosing how to act in the face of it. "You do not define me," I shouted, and in a surge of determination, I lunged at the whisperer. I made a swift movement, as if tearing through the curtain of fear that enveloped me. The light emanating from both of us intensified, and in an instant, I struck the whisperer with all my willpower. It trembled, and a wave of energy swept through the room, a whirlwind of light and darkness. "I am more than my scars," I declared, as the light expanded, engulfing the whisperer and the creature in a blinding radiance. Their screams turned into a distant echo, and for a moment, everything seemed to be silent. The room began to dissolve, the walls breaking apart into particles of light. I felt we were free. Anna Claudia and I together had faced our fears and won. But before I could relax, a final shadow formed, the last vestige of the pain that had pursued us. "You may have won the battle, but the war never ends," the creature's voice whispered, now distant but still present. "Pain will always return, and you will always have to fight." My eyes met Anna Claudia's, and although the shadow was still there, I knew we were no longer alone. The room completely dissipated, and we were enveloped by a blinding glow that led us to a new beginning. The journey was far from over, but at that moment, I finally understood. The struggle against pain and the demons that dwell in our souls is not a battle to be won, but a path to be walked. And with Anna Claudia by my side, I was ready to face whatever came next. The light slowly dissipated, and I found myself back in the real world. But it was not the same place I once knew. The shadows still danced, but now they were merely echoes of what they had been. Anna Claudia and I were together, but the atmosphere was heavy with a weight I couldn't ignore. What we had just faced would not be easily forgotten. The emotional scars became evident as we began to process what had happened. I looked at Anna Claudia's hands, which trembled slightly. "Are we okay?" she asked. But the doubt in her voice revealed that she knew the answer was more complicated than a simple yes or no. "We survived," I replied, though I knew this was only part of the truth, but I feel like something has changed, and I don't know if it's for the better. The memories of the battle were still fresh in my mind. The voices of the creature and the whisperer echoed like a mantra, reminding me that the pain I had faced would not be easily forgotten. Whatever I had defeated in that room, the price I paid for it was steep. The air around us seemed to vibrate with residual energy, as if the fight was still ongoing, even though we had managed to prevail. I looked at my reflection in a piece of broken glass on the ground. There were marks on my face, scars I did not remember having before. The battle had left its marks, not only on my skin, but on my soul. Anna Claudia approached, her expression worried. "Fernando, are you okay?" The concern in her voice was palpable, but I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to say yes, that everything was fine. But the truth was that I was struggling with a whirlwind of emotions. "I don't know," I confessed. "I feel like something in me has changed. I can't just go back to being who I was before. The pain, the struggle, it's all still here." She pulled me close, and I felt her warmth, a reminder that we were not alone on this journey. "I feel that too, but we can handle this together, can't we?" Her words were a balm, but the pain we shared was a heavy burden. The mystery we had solved, the fight we had won, still left unanswered questions. What was the creature really? Why did it feed on our pain? And the shadow that still lingered in our minds, the whisper that said there would always be a new battle ahead. That was something we could never fully answer. We left that place, but not without looking back. What we left behind was a battle won, but the internal war was far from over. As we exited, I realized that the city we knew had also changed. The streets were shrouded in a subtle mist, as if the world itself was aware of what we had faced. In the days that followed, life went on, but normalcy felt like an illusion. I looked at the people around me, and they seemed so carefree, so oblivious to the struggle I had faced. The emotional scars were now a part of me, like a second skin. I wouldn't be able to rid myself of them, but perhaps that wasn't the goal. I had learned that pain and struggle are part of the human experience, and that by accepting them, I could find new meaning in life. With Anna Claudia by my side, we decided we wouldn't stand still. We sought answers, but not just for ourselves. Whatever we had faced in that dark room was not an isolated case. We had felt the pain of others around us, and there were many who might need the same light we found amidst the darkness. Time passed, and the scars became marks of survival. I learned to live with them, to use them as reminders that struggle is a part of life. The pain, though present, was no longer an unbearable burden. It was a part of who I am, and it made me stronger. There were still mysteries to be solved, and the shadows would never completely cease to exist. But there was a difference. Now I had someone by my side, someone who shared the same journey. Together, we would face whatever came next, not as victims, but as warriors. The world may be filled with pain and uncertainties, but somehow that also brings the promise of healing and hope. And with that, I knew I was ready for the next battle, no matter what it might be. The memories of the battle still echoed in my mind, and it was impossible not to feel the weight of the experience in every step I took. Reflecting on what had happened, I realized it was not just a physical confrontation, but an internal battle that had unfolded within me. What I thought was a simple challenge soon turned into a journey of self-discovery and acceptance. The pain I felt now was an intrinsic part of who I am. Before, I saw it as a burden, a mark I wanted to erase. But as the days passed, I realized that each scar told a story, a narrative of resilience and courage. The marks on my face were a constant reminder that I had faced something immense, and more importantly, that I had survived. Ana Claudia was by my side, and that made all the difference. Together, we found strength in each other. She, with her light and love, reminded me that we were not alone on this journey. The connection we shared had become deeper, more meaningful, as we faced the consequences of our struggle. What was once merely friendship was now transforming into an unshakable partnership, an alliance forged in the fire of adversity. Everyday life, with its monotonous and predictable routine, felt so distant from the reality we had experienced. I looked at the faces surrounding me, and each smile, each carefree gesture made me question, do they know what it's like to fight their own shadows? Do we all carry similar battles hidden beneath the surface? These questions were always present, like a persistent echo. The world around us had not only changed physically, the fog enveloping the streets seemed to reveal a new layer of awareness. I felt a deeper connection with people, as if we could recognize each other's pain and struggles, even without words. That experience had united us into an invisible community of silent warriors, all fighting their own battles. And so we decided to take action. From the pain we faced, we found a purpose: to help those still lost in the shadows. Whatever we had encountered in those dark depths was not just a personal struggle, but a collective battle. We felt the need to share our light, to be the hope that others so desperately needed. What I learned, above all, was that pain doesn't have to be an enemy. It can be a harsh but fair teacher. Through it, I found a strength I didn't know I possessed. The scars I carry now remind me that life is a series of ups and downs, and each has its value. Accepting the pain allowed me to see beyond it, to a future where hope and healing coexist. There are still uncertainties ahead of me. Shadows will never completely disappear, and perhaps that is the beauty of life. The struggle is never in vain, for it is in the struggle that we find our true essence. Whatever comes next, I now know that I will not be alone. Ana Claudia and I together are stronger. And where there is love and understanding, there will always be light. So as I look to the future, I allow myself to feel a mix of expectation and acceptance. The unknown can be frightening, but it is also filled with promises. What truly matters is how we choose to face these uncertainties. I choose courage, I choose love, and I choose to live fully even if pain is part of the journey. And as I walk through this new reality, the question echoing in my mind is, how can we transform our pain into power? The answer perhaps lies in our ability to unite, to find strength in each other, and to never lose hope. Life is a struggle, but it is also an opportunity, and I am ready to seize it with all its complexities and beauties. As I walked alongside Ana Claudia, a feeling that something was about to happen engulfed me. The air was thick, as if the clouds above us were ready to burst into a storm. The shadows that once seemed familiar now took on a new form, a new presence, as if they were watching, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. Adrenaline coursed through my veins, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the battle we had faced was just the beginning. We decided to gather with others who had also gone through similar experiences. The group formed in a small space in the city, a place that used to be an amusement park, now abandoned and overtaken by weeds. It was the perfect spot for us to find purpose and at the same time, a space for reflection. However, as people arrived, I noticed that some of them seemed different. Their eyes carried an intensity that I couldn't identify. There was something there, a palpable energy that left me unsettled. As we shared our stories, I felt the voices intertwining into a collective lament, a symphony of pain and resilience. But amidst this, I realized we were not all the same. Some bore scars that went beyond the physical, invisible marks that left their souls darkened. And it was then that, amid our circle, a figure emerged from the shadows. He was a man with a penetrating gaze whose presence seemed to change the atmosphere around us. With an enigmatic smile, he began to speak. "Do you believe the fight is over? That the shadows you faced have been defeated? Do you have any idea what you truly faced? The battle was never against external enemies, but against the very shadows that dwell within you." His words echoed in my mind, like an unsettling whisper. Ana Claudia looked at me, her eyes reflecting a mix of confusion and fear. I knew that despite all our progress, we still had not confronted the true essence of our struggles. The man continued, narrating stories of others who had also faced their shadows and who, unknowingly, fed them, allowing them to grow and become uncontrollable monsters. With each word, the sense of urgency grew. I realized that while we tried to help others, there was a silent battle still waging within ourselves. The idea that our scars could transform into something darker began to haunt me. And then, without warning, the lights illuminating the space began to flicker and went out. A deafening silence engulfed the place. In the darkness, the man's presence seemed to intensify. "You have a choice to make," he said, his voice now a distant echo. "Pain can be your guide or your executioner. What will you choose?" Panic overtook me. Whatever was about to happen, I felt we might be on the brink of something much greater than we imagined. When the lights finally came back on, the man had vanished, but the feeling of his presence still lingered in the air. Our faces were pale, and I could sense the fear and uncertainty spreading among us. What did he mean? What were we really facing? The idea that our shadows might be manifesting in ways we did not understand was terrifying. The group began to disperse, each person lost in their own thoughts, and Ana Claudia and I decided it was time to leave. But as we walked, a feeling that something was watching us settled in my chest. The shadows around us seemed denser, more threatening. I looked at Ana Claudia, and in her gaze I saw the same fear I felt. "Are we ready to face this?" I asked, my voice trembling. She did not respond, and in an instant everything fell silent again. The echo of our conversations dissipated, and the only thing I could hear was the pounding of my heart. What lurked in the shadows? Would we be prepared to confront not just our fears, but the truths we had yet to discover? As we moved away, a sense of urgency overtook me. Whatever was watching us, I knew it was drawing closer. And with every step we took, the question became more unsettling. Would we be able to face the shadows again, now that they seemed more real than ever? I invite you to reflect on your own shadows. What battles do you face? What can pain teach you? Share your stories and reflections in the comments. Together, we can find light even in the darkness. And if you feel this journey resonated with you, like and subscribe to continue with us. For the fight never ends, and the shadows are still lurking.